I want to thank you guys for coming to listen to me tell you guys about how I went from being a respiratory therapist to a cybersecurity professional. In case you don't know, a respiratory therapist, to kind of sum it up, is someone in the hospital that you see when you can't breathe, whether it be someone bringing you a breathing treatment or actually putting you on a machine and putting the tube down to help you breathe. So I was a respiratory therapist for 10 years, and I was very dedicated to my job. I liked my job. Hi. I liked my job, but, sorry, my brain goes sometimes. I did not love my job. I worked in the pediatric intensive care unit, which means that I worked with a lot of sick children all the time. And the weight and the emotional toll that death took for me was just getting to the point where it was too much, and I didn't want to be there, and I also didn't feel that that's where I belonged. So there was one in particular morning that I came home from work because I worked graveyard, and it was a really hard night at work. We coded a kid all night long, done CPR on a child, and the child didn't make it. And so I come home, and I'm ugly crying, like blubbering, like just upset, ugly crying. I just wanted to go home, hug my kids, and crawl under my blanket cave and go to bed. Well, I walk in the front door, and my partner's sitting in the office, and he's just, working. And I was a little jealous. I was like, he looks like he just woke up, went and smelled all the dandelions that's in the damn field, and he's happy to go for the day. And I'm sitting there defeated, ugly, crying, like, So I talked to him, and I expressed that I wasn't happy and that I felt that for my well-being that I needed a change. And, I forgot about slides, guys. It's just an ugly face. There we go. And so, but I was talking to him, told him I needed a change, and he was like, well, how do you feel about cybersecurity? And to be quite honest, when he asked me that, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I do good to get my Word document formatted correctly. How am I supposed to do what you do? And so he actually started out very simply, showing me the command line, which at the time I was like, ooh, magic, because he was showing me my IP address, which later on I realized that was very easy. But at the time, it was like, candy in the candy store. And so the more he showed me, the more I wanted to learn, and the more I wanted to immerse myself, and it gave me a passion for doing something good. And so after a few weeks of thinking about it, I made a decision that wasn't light, and that was to switch. I quit being a respiratory therapist and enrolled myself in college to get a cyber degree. It was hard at first because I went from one career field where, not trying to toot my own horn, I was very good and knowledgeable, to one that I knew nothing really. I thought I knew some stuff. I did not know anything. But went to school so that they would teach me. So I made the change, and when I made the change, wasn't long after I started in school, I learned that I needed to go to conferences, and I needed to network and meet people. My favorite con at the time was DerbyCon, only because I got to drink copious amounts of alcohol and meet really awesome people. I have bad anxiety, so talking to people sometimes I will shy away and run the other direction. But BourbonCon, nope, that didn't happen. I talked to everybody. Everyone was my friend. Well, doing this, I met a wonderful gentleman who offered me an internship with his company. And when he offered me an internship, I realized that he was actually offering me a mentorship as well. And he would always answer any of my questions, never was belittling, and then also knew that I was very basic and that he had to teach me. Well, during the time of doing the internship and going to school, I go into my classes the first few days, and to be honest, I walked in and I looked around, and there's all these young gentlemen sitting there looking at me like I've walked in the wrong classroom. Like they're trying to figure out what the mom's doing in the classroom, And so I sat down, and I'm just sitting in the corner. Well, after a few days, one of my instructors come up, and he was like, hey, how would you feel about being our student ambassador? And I was like, okay. He said, we'll take your picture and put it on a pamphlet, and then some other stuff. And he was like, and the kicker, we'll pay for your schooling, which was huge for me at the time because I was, my income now is gone, and I'm doing a lower paid job to take care of my kids. So I was like, you're going to pay for my school? Great. You can put my face on any pamphlet you want. We're golden. Well, then I also, too, I would like to say I got this position because of my academic achievements, but really it was because I was the only girl in my class. I was the only female in my graduating class for cybersecurity, which we need to change, And so that was the point of it. They figured they put a female's face and have a female talk. So I went to the local high schools and spoke to the counselors about sending their kids that they were sending out of high school. I needed them to quit subconsciously being gender biased. You go in, and it was the same when I was in high school. If you're a female, they want to send you to nursing, to respiratory, or a field along that way, whereas they send the males to computer applications, computer science, or welding, auto mechanic. You typically don't see them sending females there, but it doesn't matter. A male can be a nurse, a male can be a respiratory therapist, and a female can be a cybersecurity professional as well. It shouldn't matter what gender you are. Because when you have a diverse group, we all bring different things to the table, and our thinking skills are a little different to where we complement each other and we help each other out. So also, too, during this, and this was actually because of my academic achievements, I got asked to go and speak at a conference in Washington, D.C. And speaking at this conference was this, the same thing that, I had a very strong belief in. Stop being gender biased. We can all do it. And it was a really empowering event for me to see everyone come together and include each other. I got a little off topic, sorry. But during the transition, it eventually became easier because I indulged myself in it. Not only did I attend school and do my internship, I also went to conferences. I tried to network with as many people as I could. And then I started trying out CTF events just so that I could learn. And so then, after going from college, I started my position as an entry-level cybersecurity professional. Let me tell you, when you first graduate from college or whatever course you're in, you think you know it all. You think I seen a picture earlier that a gentleman shared. It was Ruger's, but it showed a ladder up here, and you're standing at the top. You're ready to go. And you quickly realize that, no, you're down here on the bottom, and you need to humble yourself quickly. You're not expected to know it all, and no one expects you to know it all. You're going to learn from your senior peers or even your other peers that are where you are. We should always keep in mind, too, that with this, and this is something I learned from my mentor, is when you're excelling and you get ahead and you're honing your skills, when you climb up the ladder, you should always have one hand right here pulling the next person that's following in your footsteps up behind you, because that's what it's about. It's about coming together and helping everyone. And you want to make sure that the next person is as successful as you are. I skipped a lot. Sorry, guys. But so going into it, I learned to be humble. I learned that along the way, you're going to fail. It's inevitable. You're going to make mistakes. But you have to be resilient, and that's what matters. It's how you come back from that. And as long as you learn from your mistakes and the stuff that you're failing at, make yourself better. The only thing that I can think to tell people is you are the only person that can limit yourself from doing anything. Whatever limit you put on yourself is the limit you're going to have. But if you remove those limitations, then there's no limits. There's a world of possibilities. You just have to pursue yourself to do it. And this is something that I've learned. Also, too, I'm going to go over some practical advice. because I missed a lot, and I apologize about that. But you need to get educated. You need to invest in your education by pursuing a relevant degree, whether it be going to college or taking certifications. You need to invest in your education, and it also never needs to stop. Once you feel that you're the best at something, you need to learn something else. You've honed your skills, let's go to the next thing. You should never finish something and be like, all right, I'm good to go for the day. No, you need to open up the next course or the next book and start teaching yourself then too as well. Start with the basics. You need to build a strong foundation in fundamental cybersecurity concepts. And you've got to familiarize yourself with the common tools and techniques that are used, because this is stuff that you're going to use and stuff that you're going to need when you first start out. Because if you don't familiarize yourself and then you start at a job somewhere and you don't know the tools that you should know or the fundamentals, then you're hurting yourself in the long run. Gain hands-on experience. There are plenty of opportunities. Some people say, well, I can't really find anything to do. There's always going to be a capture the flag event, or you can do web-based courses, volunteer, like at a symposium or a conference. You can volunteer at a conference. Go and listen to people talk. Watch what they're doing, Getting the hands-on experience and finding a mentorship is really, really key. Stay updated. The field of technology is always changing, always updating. There's always going to be new exploits. There's always going to be new testing techniques. And you've got to familiarize yourself with all of this and stay up to date. Because if you just stop and say, okay, I've learned this, I'm good, and then you don't update yourself, you're going to fall behind quickly. Networking. This is one thing that I cannot stress enough. You have to network with people. You have to put yourself out there. If you don't, again, you're just hurting yourself. You're not going to make the meaningful connections with people that you're going to need to make. Soft skills. This one's huge. You have to be able to communicate properly. There are going to be times in cybersecurity when you have to be able to convey a technical message to a non-technical person. And if you can't communicate and collaborate effectively, then it's not going to work out for you, because they're not going to understand what you're saying. If you can't convey it, they're just not going to get it. You've got to be able to communicate what you mean and what you're saying. And then I went over the never stop learning earlier. And also, too, I know that some people have really bad, social anxiety. So you're like, well, I don't want to go talk to anybody. I'm like that. I, would rather go, and I actually went to a conference and watched talks on my TV because it felt like too much to get out and talk to people. So I just wanted to hide. But I learned to lean into the discomfort of talking to people and hone in on it and use that to my ability and to my advantage. And the more you desensitize yourself, the easier and better that it's going to get for you. And then these are some of the key takeaways. I went kind of fast. I'm really sorry, guys. But never stop learning. Go from one thing to the next. And then even if you feel that you're the latest and greatest, go back over it. Guarantee you're going to learn something else. Lean into the discomfort. You're going to be uncomfortable at times, regardless of what you're doing. Maybe you're at work and you're new, you're an entry level. You're going to be uncomfortable talking and trying to convey your message, but lean into that discomfort and know that you're going to learn from anything that you may have messed up on before. But as long as you lean into it and own it, like my anxiety, yeah, it's a part of me, but it doesn't shape who I am. It only makes me stronger. Like, you just use it to your advantage. And again, build strong relationships. I cannot tell you how important it has been for me and my career and my success with the relationships that I've made with other individuals. Even like I rode with a coworker to work once, and my coworker talked just about the whole way, not in a bad way, but gave me so much information. And at the time, I was so intimidated by his brain that I was afraid to say something. But then later, I learned, no, you need to ask more questions. You need to ask the follow-ups. Regardless if you're intimidated, they're just trying to help you, you know? So don't be afraid to ask questions. You need to ask questions. Be authentic. When I first became a cybersecurity professional, I thought I was supposed to fit into like this little certain way of being so that I could fit in. And I quickly learned that you're just lying to yourself. You got to be you, whether it be kind of crazy all the time or off on the sidelines. Stay true to yourself. Staying true to yourself is going to be way better for you in the long run. And then pay it forward. You know, my analogy earlier, we shouldn't only stop with our education. We should be helping those that are following behind us. If at every point you're climbing that ladder and you don't have someone else's hand, you're doing it wrong. And you should be no to yourself. Like, you need to help the next person. So I skipped a lot, so I'm finished way early, and I apologize. But does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Okay, oh God.
So in your journey, when you face adversity, and somebody that just didn't know how to talk to you because you were somebody different, how did you overcome those challenges of being the different person in the room, and when they couldn't just talk to you because they didn't know how?
So your question is, so the diversity, how did I overcome being in a diverse group of people where I was sometimes the only
woman in the room.
The only female?
Right.
I put some of that on myself. I had to learn to be able to walk down the hallway and quit looking at the floor. I had to learn to be able to communicate myself. And typically, when I first started my job, I would walk up to one of my other male coworkers and say their name, and then ask them a question. And then I would stand there for a minute awkwardly and ask them another question until they talked to me. But it hasn't, you know, it's something that I had to work on too. And I think, yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
No? Yes.
Have you experienced a point where your voice as a woman wasn't carried across the group?
So unfortunately, the question was, have I experienced a situation where being a woman, my voice was not heard? And unfortunately, I have. There was actually one scenario I was in where I was trying to explain my finding, and I was talked over and ignored, and my male coworker repeated what I had just said, and it was agreed to that it was valid, and then he said, that's exactly what Jessica just said. And it was a kick in the gut. Like, honestly, I was kind of sad, but at the same time, I learned from it. I say it, you don't agree with me or you start talking over me, I raise my voice and speak louder. I'm going to make sure I'm heard, especially if I know what I'm talking about.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
As somebody who transitioned to a new career, do you ever miss your old career?
No. I'll just touch on it. In my old career, being a respiratory therapist for 10 years, I made $15 an hour to support my children by myself on. And I was on my feet for 12 hours running around, being exposed to God knows what, ever come in the hospital. No, I don't miss that at all. I do miss some of the patients sometimes. But other than that, no, I get to help people in different ways, and I am 100% okay with that.
So earlier you were talking about leaning into discomfort and how your anxiety has helped you and in the shaping you in your career. What are some examples of how that's helped you out?
It's how my anxiety and discomfort and leaning into it, how that has helped me and shaped me into my career. one of the things that, and I mentioned it earlier, was desensitizing myself. I learned breathing techniques, and I also made the realization that I'm not the only person with anxiety. I'm not the only person that's afraid to talk to other people or communicate like, what we consider normal people do. So I started desensitizing myself like today, talking with you all. Typically, I used to stutter a lot when I tried to talk in front of crowds. But exposing myself more and more is what I mean by leaning into it and embracing it, and knowing that it's okay to feel the way you feel. Yeah.
What's one thing that you wish that people who are experienced in their fields knew when dealing with someone who is aspirational for that field?
So, what's one thing, I'm sorry, one more time,
What's
please.
one thing that you wish experts who are in their field knew about aspirants for their field when dealing with them?
I got to think about that one for a second. That's a really good question.
Would you advise a new person?
What do you wish your mentors did?
Yeah, my mentor was awesome. Yeah, sorry. But one thing, actually,
were not as supportive as your mentor. What do you wish that they had known to better be receptive to people like you?
yeah. So actually, and I will. So even though I said my mentor was awesome, starting out, my mentor spoke over my head a lot. And it was at the point where, initially I would ask questions a lot. So I think we need to keep in mind when we're mentoring someone else that has, showed you that they have a new passion, we need to make sure that we break it down simpler for them when we're speaking. I had the opportunity to speak to high school kids, and one of the questions was, what's a vulnerability? And at first I was kind of stumped because I was like, I know what a vulnerability is, but, got to explain it. Okay, I'm hurrying. So just communicate to their level. Make sure that they are understanding exactly what you're conveying. Because some kids are going to be scared, or even younger adults are going to be too afraid to ask. So we need to make sure that we step back and realize that they're where we were years ago. All right, one more question. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you can go ahead.
I was just going to say really quick, what type of cybersecurity? Red team, blue team, purple? And what are you doing, and what do you enjoy the most about your new career?
So I'm on a production team for ethical hacking web application. Sorry, there goes my head. So I'm a web app pen tester. And the things that I test are on production sites. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.